Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Alasia here, of course, and it is officially October, which means that we are going to be talking about things involving Halloween. The next few videos that I upload are going to be different murders and crimes that took place on Halloween night. For this first video, I am going to have to put a trigger warning because we are talking about the sexual assault and murder of a child. This is the case of the Halloween killer and what happened to Lisa French. I don't know what else to say for an introduction to this video. There isn't really much to say, we just have to get on into it. So this is about 9-year-old Lisa Ann French. She was brutally murdered on Halloween night in 1973. She is from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and she had big brown eyes and shaggy brown hair. Lisa was excited to go trick-or-treating like any other kid is. Lisa really wanted to be a butterfly for Halloween. But it was cold, so as usual, her mother would try to get her to change her costume to wear something warmer. Eventually, Lisa and her mother decided on Lisa being a hobo for Halloween, and to complete this costume, she wore jeans that were covered in tape, she wore a large oversized parka, a floppy hat made out of felt, and it was overall just kind of a thrown together last minute sort of costume. And Lisa was waiting for dinner to be ready so that she could eat and then just run out the door and go trick-or-treating. Like I said, this is taking place in 1973. 1973 was a much safer time. Things were extremely different. And around this time, it was very common for kids to go out trick-or-treating by themselves without their parents. Most kids would wait until around 6 p.m. when it got dark outside after they ate dinner, and they would say goodbye to their parents and leave. And then they would all meet up together and go out trick-or-treating together. And on this night, this is exactly what Lisa did. She ate dinner, she said goodbye to her parents, and then she left. And the street that Lisa was living on was known to be extremely safe, so it was very common for everyone on this street to just go out and go by themselves and do as they pleased. Lisa was supposed to meet a friend from school at a location called the Pumpkin Place. This was pretty much an outdoor Halloween party for kids. It was made because in the news, candy and apples were being poisoned, razors were being put into apples, and this was just meant to be a safe place for kids to go out and have fun and get their candy without any outside worries. And the Pumpkin Place was only a few blocks from Lisa's house. But according to her parents, Lisa was acting up that day, so she was no longer allowed to visit her friend at the Pumpkin Place. She was allowed to only go to a few houses and then come home by 7 o'clock. Which this I don't personally understand, because if the Pumpkin Place is meant to be safe, why wouldn't you want your child to go there even if they are acting up? I just feel like that doesn't make sense to me. I personally would have still let my child go to the Pumpkin Place knowing that it's supposed to be safer, but unfortunately this just is not what happened. Lisa left her house at 6 o'clock and she was supposed to be home by 7. Lisa had only made it to 3 houses. The first house belonged to a teacher of hers. The second house belonged to a classmate of hers. And the third house was 152 Rose Avenue. This house wasn't even a full block from Lisa's home. Lisa knew the man who lived in this house, and his name was Gerald Turner. Gerald had actually rented the duplex right next to where Lisa had lived previously. I guess they lived in this one house where Gerald was her neighbor, and then they moved down the street. So Gerald and his girlfriend had a very young baby at the time when they lived next door to each other. So Lisa would always go over and play with the baby. She would go on walks with the baby, push the baby around in the stroller, and Lisa would also always just kind of sit outside and talk to Gerald about her day at school and She would tell him what she had gotten at the store that day, or what she did at school, what she made, and just how her day was going. So Lisa knew Gerald pretty well. But when Lisa went to Gerald's house, this was actually the last time Lisa had ever been seen again. Lisa was supposed to be home by 7 p.m. Well, it started coming in close to 7:30, and this is when her mom began to worry. Because before that, she thought that maybe Lisa was just bending the rules a little bit to get a little more candy. But I guess being home a half an hour late was very uncommon for Lisa. So her mom began to worry, but she didn't think anything of it. She thought maybe she's still out getting candy. It's Halloween night. She met up with a friend and lost track of time. But hours had passed and nobody had seen Lisa. At this point, it was a few hours later, and people in the neighborhood started to get wind and get word that one of their children was missing. The authorities were called, and the PTA of the school had what they called block parents. Block parents were basically parents that lived on each block that you would call in case of an emergency, if anything happened, if you needed anything. They were just there to help. So the head block parent where Lisa lived had ended up calling 50 other block parents. She told them that Lisa had gone out by herself and she hadn't been found, and that nobody had any clue where she was. Because of this, a county-wide search began. The community was close. It was a very small community, and this meant that everyone would help search for each other. If you ever saw the movie Cheaper by the Dozen, the one little boy goes to run back to his old house, and a similar thing happens where the entire community comes together to search for this kid. By the next morning, over 5,000 people were helping to look for Lisa, and over 6,000 copies of her school photo were printed out and placed all around the county in hopes that someone would see her and recognize her from one of the pictures. Gas stations were even helping. Gas stations were giving out 25 gallons of gas to anyone who said that they were helping to search for Lisa. Rivers and creeks were all dragged in hopes of finding her, and this also led to not much luck. November 3rd, there had still been no signs of Lisa. But this is when a farmer was coming home on his tractor around 11:30 a.m. and he found 2 large trash bags on the side of McCabe Road, right off of Highway 48. He saw that the trash bags were thrown over a large fence on the side of the highway, and I believe the fence did have barbed wire on top of it. He then got off his tractor and went to examine the trash bags. One of the trash bags contained Lisa's clothing, and the other contained her naked body. People in the community ended up getting there before police did, and everyone was in shock. They were in shock that there was a murderer in their community. It was a small community that was known to be very, very safe, and nobody ever thought that there could be a murderer in this community. A church pastor was so upset about Lisa's death that he actually jumped over the barbed wire fence, cutting up his hands and the rest of his body so that he could sit with Lisa's body and pray over her. On November 6th, only 3 days later, the entire community showed up at Lisa's funeral to show their respect for her and her family. The first 9 rows were filled with Lisa's classmates and Girl Scout troops. Eventually, police were led to Gerald Turner. It took 9 months of questioning for authorities to be sure that Gerald was responsible. On August 8th, 1974, almost a full year after Lisa's murder, Gerald confessed. At trial, he then denied his confession and said that he was tired of authorities contacting him and questioning him, so he went along with it anyway. In Gerald's confession, he said that he was 25 the night that Lisa had stopped by to visit his house on Halloween, and he said that that night he was very sexually motivated. When she came over because she knew and trusted him, he invited her inside, and once inside, he began to sexually assault her. He said that he wasn't trying to harm her, and at one point he realized that she wasn't breathing. Turner tried to revive her and said that he had no intention of murdering her, just assaulting her. Gerald's girlfriend then came home when he was in the middle of trying to revive her. So, to hide the body from his girlfriend, he put socks over his hands and moved her to the bathroom. His girlfriend was the mother of his young child, and that night she had taken her child to the pumpkin place, and she said that she arrived back home around 7:15. She said when she got home, Gerald was lying on the couch in a bathrobe. Immediately, he told her that he was sick and he needed rest. She began noticing that he kept getting up to go to the bathroom, and he kept telling her not to bother him. She wasn't concerned, though, because she did think he was sick, and she then went and left to go see her mother. And authorities believed that this is when Turner goes to hide the body. Gerald claimed that she stopped breathing and he didn't know why. After an autopsy was done on Lisa's body, it was determined that she had died of shock. She was so scared to death that she died of shock. And this is a very, very uncommon way to die. But because she trusted him, and it was Halloween night, and she went to go see him, she never expected anything like this to happen. What 9-year-old girl does? And she died of shock. On February 23rd, 1975, Turner was found guilty of second-degree murder. In 1992, he was actually paroled on good behavior, meaning that he only served 17 years in prison for sexually assaulting and murdering a child. He then went to a halfway house, and city, state, and county officials protested that he be put back in prison. When they found out that he was working at a recycling plant, they went there and protested there as well, and they did not want him back as a member of their community because of what he did to this little girl. He then ended up getting fired because of the protesting happening outside of his job. A civil lawsuit was filed by citizens in November of 1993. They tried to get the judge and the jury to reconsider his release, and because of this, he remained in prison until he was officially released in July of 1999. But the state ended up blocking this release. They tried to put him in a mental institution as a sex predator because of a new sex predator law. And this law was actually put into place specifically because of Gerald. It was called Turner's Law. And this was made as a last attempt to get him to be locked up and put behind bars for what he did. In 1998, he went on trial to see if he could be held by Turner's Law, but the jury decided that he wasn't a sex predator. A 15-year-old babysitter, a former wife, a former girlfriend, all testified that if they denied him sex, he would then continue to rape them. He couldn't even be held by a law that was created specifically for him. For some reason, this jury is finding an excuse to let this man run free after he sexually assaulted and murdered a child. She was 9 years old, and they're just letting him run free. In July of 1998, Gerald threatened a caseworker at his halfway house with a knife, and they then requested that his parole be revoked and the judge denied this. And once again, Turner was free. Over and over again, they had chances to lock this man up. But for some unknown reason, they keep letting him free. In 1999, Turner filed a lawsuit against a waste management company because they denied him a job because of his conviction, and he actually won this lawsuit. In 2002, he was continuing to live in a halfway house when authorities went to check in on him. When they checked in on him, they found computers and hard drives that had explicit videos and photos on them and inappropriate magazines. And this was illegal for a sex offender to have any of these items. He had also been caught on 3 separate occasions trying to watch a movie about serial killers. One of these movies was about a young girl being slashed to death. And because of this, he was put back in prison. He was sentenced to 15 years for violating parole, and it took 10 years for this to happen after his release. After he was released, when he shouldn't have been released in the first place, it took 10 years to get him locked up again. He had a mandatory release date set for February 1st, 2018. In October of 2017, Lisa's mom and the Wisconsin Department of Justice worked together to start a petition to keep him in prison. They were trying once again to keep him held under Turner's law. He had a preliminary hearing set for April 8th, 2018, and he is now in his late 60s. The formal hearing date is unknown from what I've tried looking into. I did try looking into it to see if anything happened after the preliminary hearing, and I wasn't able to find any information. So, that's the solved case of Lisa French and the Halloween killer. After doing videos like these, I always have a hard time trying to figure out what to say, because I don't want to say, oh, subscribe to my channel, let me know down below. Like, I don't want to end these videos that way. I would like to know down below if there's any other cases you would like me to look into, whether it be solved or unsolved, because I do really enjoy researching and filming these videos. If anyone knows anything about Turner's hearing, please list it in the comments down below so that myself and everyone else watching knows any updated information on what has happened. And that is all for this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.